Who would have ever thought a children's Pixar movie would have proven to be so eerily accurate in 2025? In the film, Earth is trashed and abandoned, and humans live on a spaceship where robots do everything for them. The people have become completely reliant on technology. They float around in chairs, glued to screens, drinking meals through straws, barely moving at all. It looked exaggerated at the time, but honestly, it doesn't feel that far off now. Screen addiction is a very real thing. People spend hours a day looking at phones, tablets, TVs, and laptops. There are kids who can operate an iPad before they can talk. And with food delivery, smart devices, remote work, and AI, you really don't need to leave your house, ever. And I was thinking about this just earlier in the morning before I even knew I'd be doing this video today. We really are just willingly giving up our livelihoods to computers, more specifically artificial intelligence. And people's only argument in defense of it is usually, it's a tool. And it's the future. Okay, it never said it wasn't. That doesn't make it good. I mean, do we really want to live in a world where all our entertainment is spat out of a computer with no human intention behind it, where people's entire lives are dictated by algorithms, being force-fed products they can't even afford because there are no jobs left, lost in this cesspool of AI slop? Yeah, it's the future, and it also sucks. Anyway, a bit off topic, but WALL-E also hit on environmental issues. The Earth in the movie is so polluted and full of garbage that it's basically uninhabitable. Now we're dealing with real concerns about plastic waste, climate change, overconsumption. There's even talk of building off-world colonies, something that used to only exist in movies like this. And this one too, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This came out in 1968. It's one of the most influential science fiction movies of all time, but it didn't just influence films that came later, it influenced technology that would come later. The movie showed people casually using flat, portable screens to watch videos and have video calls. At the time, that looked futuristic as hell, basically science fiction fantasy, but now this technology is in the palm of everyone's hands. The movie's news pads looked almost identical to modern tablets, right down to how people hold and use them. And then there's the video calling. One scene, a character chats with his daughter from space using what's basically Zoom for Zoom. It was 1968, once again. Now we can FaceTime our pets if we want to. On top of that, there's HAL, one of the creepiest movie antagonists of all time. People probably didn't expect it at the time, but these days we can all sort of talk to HAL right on our own home computers. And not to mention, even home computers themselves were fantasy back then. While Siri or Alexa won't lock you in a spaceship yet, only because we're not in spaceships, they do talk back, they control smart homes, and then of course there are chatbots like ChatGPT. The Terminator. A perfect movie in so many ways. A killer 80s synth soundtrack, one of the scariest robots ever put to screen. I mean, it's a robot skeleton. Amazing, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and a super original plot. But behind all the action was a very unsettling concept, now unfortunately become a reality. Autonomous machines being used in warfare. Skynet sent Arnie to the past, but in the bleak future flashbacks in the movie, we see what are essentially drones, aerial machines flying around, targeting humans without anyone piloting them. Not anyone human, anyway. At the time, that was total science fiction. Now, it's a big part of real-world military operations. Today, drones are used in warfare all the time. Some are remotely controlled, but more and more are using AI to assist with decision-making or even navigate without humans at all. There are drones that can identify targets, track movement, and strike, all while being guided by algorithms. We're not quite at full Skynet levels, but it's closer than a lot of us probably are comfortable with. And what happens if our machines get so smart they decide to wipe all of us and lonely cave people out? Unfortunately, we haven't invented a time machine to go back in time to prevent that. Next up is Face Off. Yes, I'm actually putting one of the most over-the-top action movies of the 90s on the list. You wouldn't think any part of this would ever happen in real life. I mean, swapping faces between two people, madness, right? Except surgeons have actually come pretty close. If you haven't seen this one, Nicolas Cage and John Travolta's characters switch faces, down to the skin, bone structure, and voice, with advanced surgery. Well, in the mid-2000s, real-life facial transplant surgeries started happening. The first partial face transplant was done in 2005, and since then, there have been full face transplants performed on people who suffered extreme injuries. It's not science fiction anymore, or whatever genre you want to place this movie in. Of course, it's not as seamless as it is in the movie. I mean, these procedures are incredibly complex. There are teams of surgeons, months of rehab, and tons of medication to prevent rejection, but still, the idea that you can take one person's face and surgically attach it to another person's head, not as ridiculous as it seems, even the voice part, because now AI can just mimic people's voices, so even if you want to do that part, you can. It actually ended up being closer to real science than anyone expected. Next up is The Running Man, a movie that is about as 80s as it gets. Jesse the Body Ventura, synth music again, Arnold Schwarzenegger again. It's part science fiction, part action, part pro wrestling, and part reality TV, something that wouldn't really shape into what we know it as today until decades later. But I'm getting more specific than just reality TV. I'm more talking about reality game shows. The movie is about a man, played by Arnie, who gets wrongfully accused of a crime and has to battle his way through a violent game show where criminals are hunted by maniacs with overly elaborate and over-the-top weapons. The winner gets their freedom back. Now, fortunately, we don't have any game shows where people die on camera, but we do seem to take this sick pleasure in watching shows where desperate people compete for life-changing amounts of money, only to be let down in these next to impossible to win games, or failing by pure chance alone. Yes, I'm talking about Beast games mostly. This show was about as close as we can comfortably get to a dystopian game show, without just straight up injuring people on purpose. There was a lot of controversy surrounding this series though. People apparently did get very hurt. We could do a full video on this show. Let us know in the comments if you're interested in that. I know I would be. Alright, so there's a ton of science fiction on the list, so for the sake of variety, let's talk about the 1940 Disney classic Pinocchio. This is easily one of my favorite animated films ever. Weirdly dark story. The plot is basically one long string of abductions, but that's not what I'm focusing on here. See, as many times as I watched this movie growing up, I never caught what might be the strangest prediction on this list: the rise of Red Lobster. The spot where Honest John and Gideon meet the coachman, it's literally called the Red Lobster Inn, and the logo is surprisingly similar to the one we know today. I mean, sure, if your place is called Red Lobster, you're probably gonna slap a red lobster on the sign, but I don't know, still makes you wonder. Next up is the John Carpenter classic They Live. Great movie. It's about a down on his luck guy, played by Rowdy Roddy Piper of all people, who comes across a pair of sunglasses that show him the world as it actually is. Billboards that looked like perfume ads now just say obey. Magazines say consume, and horrifyingly, the rich and powerful turn out to be creepy alien-like creatures in disguise. When this came out, it seemed like sci-fi paranoia, but looking at it now, I mean, we have algorithms that push certain content whether we want it or not, addictive platforms that try to sneak in messages about how we should think, shop, and vote. And we're not just bombarded with ads and propaganda, we have targeted ads. Thanks to our internet being tracked and our phones listening in on our every conversation. It sounds conspiratorial, but it actually just isn't. And I don't mean to say that there's this monolithic, organized group controlling everything like in the movie, but do I think politicians and powerful people at the top of every business, company, and corporation would do everything in their power to make as much money off of people, regardless of the effect it has on their mental and physical well-being? And add in what whistleblowers like Edward Snowden reveal about mass surveillance and media manipulation, and suddenly They Live doesn't seem that far-fetched. The aliens might have been metaphors, but the rest, pretty accurate. At some point though, we all just gotta realize when we're out of bubblegum.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Videodrome, one of the creepiest movies I've ever seen. So a sleazy cable exec named Max Wren finds a secret TV broadcast called Videodrome that airs extreme violence. Wren isn't sure if what he's seeing is real or just very well staged, but the movie is really about the effect that this type of thing has on the viewer. In the film, it's taken to the extreme. Of course, Wren becomes so obsessed with Videodrome that it begins to corrupt him, not just mentally, physically. Essentially, he becomes so consumed by the media, his physical body manifests into this hybrid of flesh and technology. It's almost impossible to get across in words. It's really a movie you just got to experience for yourself. Just prepare to be icked out. But as surreal as the film is, it's about something all too real. The effect of violent, overstimulating media. The idea that what you can watch can rewire your brain. People say this a lot. to the point where it's become pretty meaningless and cliched, but I'm gonna say it anyway because in this case it really fits. This movie is even more relevant now than it was back in the 80s. Back then it was making a statement about violent movies you could rent at the video store, needlessly graphic news segments, but people weren't constantly glued to little computers with access to basically everything like we are today. People doom scroll for hours, and what seems to get rewarded far too often? Shock content. It gets millions of views, and some people make whole careers out of having the most dog crap opinions on the internet. Not to mention, you can find real disturbing acts of violence captured on camera with the flick of your finger these days. And even the whole body horror angle in Videodrome, that's not even that off base. Tech companies are working on neural implants and brain-computer links that could actually reshape how we think and interact. It's a messy, uncomfortable movie, but the core idea screens changing people. It's more relevant than ever. And 28 days later, this movie starts with a guy waking up in an empty hospital and realizing the world fell apart while he was unconscious. A lab-created virus got loose, spread, and within weeks, society completely collapsed. Cities are empty, people are hiding out, and the infected move fast, both literally and in terms of how quickly the virus spreads. At the time, this felt like a more intense version of your typical zombie movie, but what made it so uncomfortable to people was how real it felt. These zombies weren't supernatural like the ones in Dawn of the Dead, they were the result of human experimentation. Watching the movie now, it's hard not to see the parallels to 2020. Panic buying, people avoiding each other, a total system breakdown. This movie hit closer to home than it did when it came out, and even though the virus in the movie turns people into rage-filled maniacs, something that there were not as many instances of in 2020, although there were still some, the movie was really about how fragile civilization is when something goes wrong, showing how quickly things unravel once panic sets in. I've been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.